It is funny how people can destroy you with the very love you thought would save you. Or maybe it is tragic. When he looked at me with those steel-gray eyes that once softened when they found mine, I realized love could sometimes cut sharper than hatred. The first time Ethan accused me of marrying him for his money, I laughed. It was a bitter, reckless laugh, the kind you make when the floor disappears under your feet and you still pretend you can stand. But the second time he said it with such conviction, I knew a fracture had formed between us. A fracture wide enough to swallow everything we had built in silence and stolen moments. We lived in New York, the city of dreams, ambition, and facades. Ethan Miller was the kind of man newspapers loved to put on their front page. A self-made CEO who wore his success like armor, every movement precise, every decision calculated. And I was, in his world, the unexpected, the quiet boy who studied literature, the one who never cared about bank accounts or limelight. Maybe that was why I fell for him. Because beneath the iron walls, Ethan had once been tender. But love changes when doubt seeps in. Started small. A careless question about money I had borrowed to help a friend. A raised brow when I bought groceries with the black card he had given me, even though I barely touched his wealth. Then came the whispers from his board members, poisonous words wrapped in silk. He's after your money, Ethan. Be careful. You have too much to lose. And Ethan listened. I could see it in the way his hand hesitated before reaching for mine. The way his gaze lingered on me too long, as if searching for motives in the lines of my face. I tried to laugh it off, tried to remind him of the nights we spent tangled in sheets, whispering about our dreams. But suspicion has a way of erasing memory. The breaking point came the night his grandfather collapsed. Henry Miller, the only one in Ethan's family who ever looked at me with warmth instead of disdain, had been more of a grandfather to me than my own. I was there when it happened, at the Miller estate in Connecticut, the grand halls echoing with silence as Henry suddenly clutched his chest and fell. Ethan was away on a business trip, unreachable, his phone drowning in meetings and obligations. I did not think. I acted. I drove Henry to the hospital, my hands trembling on the steering wheel, my voice cracking as I begged the nurses to hurry. For hours I sat in the cold waiting room, holding on to hope like a lifeline. When Ethan finally arrived, furious and pale, he didn't see the sweat on my brow or the terror still clinging to my skin. He saw only what his doubts painted. You think saving my grandfather will make you look good? His words struck harder than any slap. Do you think this makes you untouchable, Liam? That I won't see through your games? I could not breathe. I wanted to scream, to shake him and demand how he could believe such filth after everything. After all the nights I stayed up comforting him when the weight of his empire became unbearable. After every kiss that left me trembling. After every vow whispered in the dark. But the words stuck in my throat. Instead, I whispered, I did it because I love him. And because I love you. Ethan's jaw tightened. His silence was worse than his accusation. That was the moment I knew. Love should not feel like a trial you constantly have to defend yourself in. Love should not demand evidence. So I made a choice. I filed for divorce. The papers felt heavy in my hands when I signed them. I thought my hand would shake, that my heart would break into something beyond repair. But there was only numbness. A quiet, hollow numbness that told me this was survival, not surrender. The media exploded when the news broke. CEO Ethan Miller's marriage ends in scandal. The whispers grew louder, crueler, twisting the truth into shapes that painted me as a gold digger, a manipulator, a man who dared to reach above his station. I let them talk. The truth did not matter anymore. Not to the world, not to Ethan. But what haunted me was not their voices. It was the silence between us. Ethan did not fight the divorce. He signed the papers without a word, his eyes cold, his lips pressed in a thin line. Yet every time I looked at him, I saw something flicker beneath the ice. A hesitation, a question, a longing he refused to admit. And God help me, I longed too. I thought leaving him would free me. But freedom is a cruel word when your heart still aches for the one you walked away from. Every night I found myself replaying memories, the sound of his laughter echoing in my empty apartment, the warmth of his hand on my back when crowds overwhelmed me. I told myself it was over, that love could not survive where trust had died. But then fate decided otherwise. It was weeks after the divorce when Henry insisted on seeing me again. He had recovered slowly, his once strong frame weakened but his spirit unshaken. He called me to his estate, his voice warm over the phone, almost pleading. "Liam, come. I need to see you. Please." I hesitated. I knew Ethan would be there. The thought of facing him again, of feeling those eyes strip me bare, terrified me. But Henry had given me kindness when I was drowning. I owed him that much, so I went. When I arrived, the Miller estate stood as daunting as Evergrande, cold, untouchable. But Henry's smile, though weary, melted something in me. He held my hand as if I were family, his eyes glistening with gratitude. "You saved me," he whispered. "Not just my life, Liam. You saved what's left of this family. Ethan." He doesn't say it, but I know he feels it. Don't give up on him yet. I wanted to laugh, to cry, to tell him that Ethan had already given up on me. But before I could speak, I felt that familiar gaze burn into me. Ethan stood at the doorway, his eyes fixed on me. And in that moment, with Henry's hand still clutching mine, I knew the story between us was far from over. Ethan's gaze was like a storm, restrained yet dangerous. His posture, stiff and calculated as always, betrayed nothing to Henry. But to me it was a battlefield. I wanted to run, to escape the weight of his eyes, the history we carried, the ache that still lived in every corner of me. But Henry's fragile grip anchored me in place. "Talk to him," Henry said softly, his eyes flicking between us. "For my sake, for your own." And then, with the wisdom only age and near loss could give, he left the room. The echo of his cane against the marble floor faded, and silence swallowed us whole. Ethan stepped closer, his breath sharp, his voice low. "You shouldn't have come. Your grandfather asked me," I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. His jaw clenched. "Always with the right answers. Aren't you, Liam?" His tone was cold, but beneath it I caught something fragile like glass about to break. I met his eyes, refusing to look away. "I'm not here to fight, Ethan. I'm not here for you at all." A lie. We both knew it. For a moment, he looked at me like the man I once knew. The Ethan who had kissed me under city lights, who had laughed against my neck, who had whispered I was his home. But then, as quickly as it appeared, the mask slid back into place. "You wanted out," he said, each word precise, deliberate. "You got it. Why come back?" The truth slipped out before I could stop it. "Because I never wanted to leave you." Silence. His breath caught, so quiet I almost didn't hear it. For a man like Ethan, control was everything. And yet, in that second, I watched his armor crack. "I didn't know how to believe you," he whispered finally. His voice trembled, raw in a way I had never heard before. Everywhere I looked, people were telling me you wanted something from me. And his eyes fell to the floor. "I was afraid you'd leave once you got it." I swallowed hard, my chest burning. "So instead, you pushed me away first." He didn't deny it. He didn't have to. I took a step forward, close enough to see the lines of exhaustion on his face, close enough to feel the faint heat radiating from him. My hands shook, but I reached out, letting my fingers brush his sleeve. "I never wanted your money, Ethan. I never wanted your empire, your power, your damn headlines. I only wanted you. Just you." His eyes lifted, and for once, I saw the man beneath the CEO, stripped of walls and titles, vulnerable, desperate. And then he broke. His arms were around me before I could breathe, pulling me into him like he'd drown if he let go. His body trembled against mine, his breath hot and uneven against my shoulder. "God, Liam," he choked. "I ruined everything." I closed my eyes, tears stinging as I clung to him. "No, we're still here. That has to mean something." We stood there, two men in a silent war that love refused to let end, holding on to each other as if we could stitch back the torn pieces with sheer will. But love, as Henry had reminded me, wasn't just about surviving. It was about choosing again and again, even after the mistakes. When Ethan finally pulled back, his hands lingered on my face, tracing the lines as though trying to memorize me. His lips trembled. "I don't deserve you." I shook my head. "You don't get to decide that." "I do. And I'm telling you I want to try again." For the first time in months, I saw Ethan smile. Not the polite, calculated curve he gave to shareholders or journalists, but the rare, unguarded smile that once made me fall in love with him. We both knew it wouldn't be easy. Trust had been broken. Wounds still lingered. The world outside those walls still waited with judgment and whispers. But in that moment, none of it mattered. Because for the first time since everything fell apart, we were on the same side again. The weeks that followed were fragile, like walking on thin glass. Ethan tried God, he tried. He stayed home more, invited me to board dinners only if I wanted to go. And, most of all, he listened. The CEO who once barked orders now sat with me in the quiet of our apartment, asking me what I felt, what I needed. And I, too, had to learn to forgive, to let go of the bitterness, to believe in him again. It wasn't perfect. We argued. We stumbled. But every night, when he reached for me and whispered good night like it was a prayer, I believed a little more. Henry became our quiet witness. He often teased us gently, saying, "You two remind me of myself and my late wife, always fighting, always finding your way back." His health improved slowly, and I often wondered if seeing Ethan and me together had given him a reason to fight harder. One evening, months later, Ethan took me back to the very street where we first met. The New York skyline blazed above us, lights flickering like stars against the dark. He stood there in his suit and tie, but his eyes were soft, vulnerable. "I don't have a ring this time," he said, his voice shaking. "I don't have grand promises, or the perfect words. But I have me, all of me, if you'll still have it." Tears blurred my vision, but I laughed through them, heart pounding. I never stopped having it. He pulled me in, his lips meeting mine under the city lights, the noise of traffic fading into nothing. It wasn't the fiery desperation of our early days, nor the broken ache of our darkest nights. It was something steadier, deeper, a love rebuilt. We didn't erase the past. We couldn't. But we wrote over it, line by line, with something stronger. And every time I looked at Ethemy husband, my storm, my home, I knew we had made it through the fire. Not unscathed, not untouched, but together. And for us, that was enough. Because in the end, love was never about money, power, or appearances. It was about choosing each other, even when the world told us not to. And as long as Ethan and I kept choosing, day after day, heartbreak after heartbreak, then maybe, just maybe, we'd make it. Hand in hand. Hearts tangled, but finally at peace. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe to stay updated with the latest videos.